If you're planning to run a virtual event, such as a conference, presentation day, or simply a group work session during class, Zoom Meetings is a great option, with features like polls and chat for interactivity and breakout rooms to allow group work or simultaneous talks. For presentation days and conferences, you can allow for concurrent presentations by setting up breakout rooms and allowing attendees to move between rooms as they please, thereby allowing them to attend the talks that are of interest to them. In this video, we'll see how to register for Zoom large meetings if you require more than 300 attendees, and we'll look at how to set up your event, manage registration, create and pre-assign breakout rooms, start your event and ensure it is properly secured, manage participants' questions and polls, start and manage breakout rooms during your event, and export video, audio, and transcripts following the event. If you don't need concurrent talks or presentations, however, and will only have one speaker or panel giving a talk to the entire audience at any given time, you might instead consider the Zoom Webinars add-on, which we cover in another video. All features we cover in this video are available with regular Zoom meetings, but if your event will have more than 300 attendees, you'll need to add the Zoom Large Meetings add-on. As long as you anticipate 300 attendees or fewer, you can skip this section. At present, Zoom Large Meetings is billed on the first of every month, and the price you'll pay will depend on the number of attendees you require. Once you've selected an appropriate user tier, log in at jira.uwo.ca/service desk and open a help desk ticket. Enter a summary like Zoom Large Meetings, and in the description field, request that Zoom Large Meetings be added to your account. Specify the user tier you require, your Western username, and a speed code and account number to bill. Finally, click Create, and within a day or two, the Large Meetings license will be added to your account. One thing to keep in mind is that your subscription is not automatically canceled. You'll need to open another help desk ticket when you wish to cancel. Billing is done on the first of every month, and WTS has advised that those wishing to cancel should open a ticket a few days before the end of the month to ensure that their cancellation is processed in time. If you've requested the Large Meetings add-on, you should wait for an email from WTS indicating that it has been added to your account. Then, log in at zoom.uwo.ca to schedule your event. From the left menu bar, select Meetings and click Schedule a Meeting. Fill out the details of your event, including its title, date, time, and duration. In some cases, users want to enable registration so that they have an idea of who's attending, so you can check this box to enable that feature. We'll leave the meeting ID set to generate automatically, and we won't be using a template. If you were creating this sort of event repeatedly, you could save it as a template to reuse the same settings for multiple events. Optionally, you can enable a passcode for the event, and it's a good idea to do this to help prevent Zoom bombing, where malicious actors try joining random Zoom meeting IDs to disrupt them. You can also enable a waiting room, which allows you to screen attendees joining the event. We recommend this option as it both allows you to screen your participants and allows you to run through your security checks at the start of the event before you let everyone in. However, note that it does require you to be monitoring your participant list during the event, screening and admitting people as they join. Remember, participants may join late or they may accidentally disconnect and rejoin, so if you enable this option, you'll want to ensure that someone is keeping an eye on the participant list regularly throughout the event to see if anyone is waiting to be admitted. Either way, it's a good idea to enable at least one of these options, passcode or waiting room. For highest security, enable both. Requiring authentication is a good idea. If you're running a Western-only event in which only faculty, staff, or students can attend, then select Western accounts only. If you need to allow external participants, perhaps external collaborators or parents or grandparents attending a student's presentation day, you'll want to select any Zoom account. In either case, it's best to leave authentication as required, forcing all participants to sign up for a Zoom account. External users can sign up for free accounts, so there's no concern that anyone might be asked to pay. By requiring authentication, we give ourselves the ability to ban specific Zoom accounts if they become a problem during the event. We'll leave the video settings set to off to disable participant video by default. You'll still be able to allow them to optionally start their video during the meeting, as we'll see later. Leave audio settings set to both to allow participants to dial in from their phones or use their computer for audio. If you haven't enabled a waiting room, you can optionally allow attendees to join the meeting before you as host join and start the meeting. In this case, participants will see a notification indicating that the host has not yet joined, but will be able to interact with other attendees. If you disable this option, attendees will be kept waiting until you join and start the meeting. If you have a waiting room enabled, then this setting has no effect. Either way, attendees will be kept waiting in the waiting room until you admit them. We suggest disabling this option so that you're able to monitor the entirety of your event. We'll mute each attendee upon joining the event to prevent disruption, and we can now choose to create breakout rooms and pre-assign attendees to rooms, but we'll look at this shortly. If you wish, you can choose to automatically record the event to your computer, and you can set restrictions on the countries from which users can join. For example, perhaps we only want to allow users from Canada to join. In this case, we would leave the radio button here selected and ensure the countries field contains only Canada. In this case, I'll forego that restriction. Lastly, you should name one or more alternative hosts in case you are ill on the day of the event. These individuals will be given administrative privileges over the event and will be able to start and manage the event and its participants just as you can as host. You don't necessarily want all of your speakers to be alternative hosts. Instead, your alternative hosts can be speakers, but they're also people who you want to manage the crowd. They'll be able to remove attendees from the event, promote attendees to co-hosts, and so on. For regular speakers, we'll leave them simply as regular attendees and just allow them to start their video and audio during the event. However, if we're going to be using breakout rooms and we'll have moderators, we'll be sure to add them as alternative hosts here. One thing to note is that if you try to add an alternative host and you receive a message indicating that the user is not in your Zoom account, it's either because you're trying to add a non-Western user, which is not supported, or you're trying to add a Western member who has never logged into Zoom before. To fix this, you can either tell them to log in to zoom.uwo.ca and confirm their email address, after which you can add them as an alternative host, or you can simply promote them to co-host during the meeting, as we'll see later. Once we're happy with our settings, we'll click Save to get the event on the books. You'll be taken to the settings page for the event. On this page, you can copy the registration link for the event if you enabled registration. Otherwise, this will instead show the join link for the event. Alternatively, you can click Copy Invitation to get the full Zoom invitation to email out to potential attendees. Scrolling down, you'll see the registration settings. By default, registrations are automatically approved. If you wish to manually review and approve them, click Edit and select the Manually Approve option. Optionally, you can have it email you each time someone registers, but if you're expecting many registrants, you may wish to leave this disabled and simply remember to log in periodically and approve registrations. For the questions that registrants will be asked, click the Questions tab. By default, users will be asked for their first and last names and email address. If you need additional information, feel free to check additional boxes as needed, but try to keep the form as short as possible to make registration simple. If you have custom questions to pose to registrants, select Custom Questions and click New Question. Select the question type and type your question text. Be sure not to prompt the user for any sensitive or confidential information. When happy with your settings, click Save All. When a registrant now visits your registration link, they'll be prompted for the information you selected. Refreshing the event settings page, we scroll to the bottom and now see that we have one registrant. Clicking Edit, we can check this registrant and select Approve or Deny. In some cases, you may wish to export the list of registrants. To do so, select Reports from the left menu bar. Select Meeting, Registration Report, and find the event in question. Then click Generate. If desired, filter by approved or denied registrants and click Continue. After generation is complete, click Download. Opening the file in Excel, we can see the list of registrants. There are some other advanced options of Zoom meetings that you may wish to explore. At any time, to get back to your event settings page, click Meetings from the left menu bar and click the title of your event. Scrolling to the bottom, we see the Email Settings tab. Here, you can customize the email contact for the event in case attendees have questions. If you enabled registration, you can also customize the text of the confirmation email that each registrant will receive. On the Branding tab, you can add a banner and/or logo to your registration page. During the event, you may wish to poll the audience on the fly for added interactivity or to gauge audience understanding or engagement with the material. While these poll questions can be set up on the fly during the event, that's probably not the best time to be rushing to set up questions. So you can set up your poll questions in advance here so that everything is ready for you during your event. We'll see how that works shortly. You may wish to allow the chat feature during the event, allowing participants to submit written questions and/or chat amongst themselves. To do this, click Settings from the left menu bar and select In-Meeting Basic. Enable Chat and click Enable. Optionally, you can enable private chat to allow participants to message each other privately. Finally, you may wish to automatically save chats after the meeting ends to save the full contents of your event's chat to your computer. As we'll see shortly, Zoom has an auto transcription feature that you can enable in the event. To ease accessibility, you might consider allowing participants to save transcripts of the event. To do this, click In Meeting Advanced and enable Save Captions. Either way, if you enable transcription in your meeting, the transcript will be saved to your computer, but this option allows other participants to save the transcript themselves. If you want to create your breakout rooms in advance, select your event by clicking Meetings and clicking the Edit button beside your event. Scroll down and check Breakout Room Pre-Assign, and then click Create Rooms. From this dialog, you can manually create a breakout room by clicking the plus. To rename the new room, click the title and change as desired. Be careful here though. If you press Enter in this field, at the time of this recording there's a UI bug that takes you out of the meeting settings altogether, and your changes won't be saved. We'll try that again. This time, we'll press Tab or click out of the title field. If you like, you can manually assign specific participants to the room by entering their email addresses and pressing Enter. You don't necessarily have to assign anyone to the rooms, however. If you're running a presentation day or conference, for example, you might just opt to create your rooms in advance, but then let participants choose the rooms they wish to join during the event. Now, if you are looking to pre-assign participants, typing them manually is fine for the simplest of cases. For larger events, however, you'll want to import participants from a file. You can do this by clicking Import from CSV. Click the download link to download a template so that your file will be in the correct format for importing. Opening this file in Excel, we see the name of each room in the first column, followed by the email addresses of the participants to assign to the rooms in the second column. Leave the column headers intact and type your room names. Here, we'll create 5 breakout rooms for our presentation day. Next, type the email addresses of the participants you'd like to assign to the rooms. Note that you don't necessarily need to assign every participant. You can always manually assign participants during the event or allow them to choose their own rooms to join. However, each room that you specify in this file must have at least one participant. One option to get around this if you want to import empty rooms is simply to assign one participant to multiple rooms. For example, here I'm assigning one participant to 3 different rooms. Then, after importing, I'll remove them from all but one. When finished, save the file. Returning to the browser, click the Browse link and select your template. By doing this, however, note that any breakout rooms or assignments already created will be overwritten by the contents of the CSV file. I'll now fix up the situation I created by removing the participant that I assigned to multiple rooms from all but one of them, leaving me with several empty rooms. When finished with your room creation and pre-assignments, click Save. Note that Zoom does have some limitations surrounding breakout rooms. You can have up to a maximum of 50 breakout rooms. If you have 20 breakout rooms or fewer, each room can have up to 500 participants. Of course, that limit would be 300 unless you've added the Zoom Large Meetings add-on. If you have 30 rooms, the room capacity limit decreases to 400 attendees per room, and once we reach 50 rooms, the limit decreases to 200 per room. Additionally, while you can pre-assign participants, you can only pre-assign up to 200 of them. If your event will be larger, you'll either need to assign the rest of them during the event or, more realistically, allow them to choose the rooms they wish to join themselves during the event. To start your event, open Zoom and select Meetings. Select your event and click Start. Alternatively, from zoom.uwo.ca, click Meetings and click the Start button beside your event, which will launch Zoom and start the event. Now, alternative hosts will not be able to start the meeting using either of these methods. Instead, they'll need to use the join link of the event that they will have received via email. So just remind your alternative hosts that if you happen to be ill on the day of the event, they can still start the meeting themselves by clicking the join link in the invitation email they received when you added them as hosts. At the beginning of your event, preferably before admitting participants from the waiting room if you enabled that feature, you'll want to verify that your security settings are configured correctly to avoid problems during the session. Click the Participants button at the bottom if you don't see a list of participants. Then select the ellipses in the bottom right. We want to mute all of our participants upon entry to avoid disruption, so we'll leave this checked. In this case, I'll assume we don't want participants to speak in the main room. Perhaps we want to have some introductory remarks or a keynote session in the main room. In this case, we don't want to see or hear from participants in the main room. So we'll uncheck Allow Participants to unmute themselves. Clicking the ellipses again, we'll also disable the ability for participants to rename themselves, avoiding the possibility of someone renaming themselves to something inappropriate. Next, click the Security button. For now, we'll leave screen sharing disabled for participants to avoid disruption. We'll leave chat enabled to allow them to ask questions and chat amongst themselves. And finally, we'll disable the ability to start their video. Of course, the settings you choose here will depend on how strict you want to be in the main room. In the breakout rooms, most of these security settings don't apply. Your participants will still be able to start their video and unmute themselves in the breakout rooms, even though we've disabled those features here. You will still need to allow screen sharing, however, once you start the breakout rooms, if your participants will need to share their screens. So once you start your breakout rooms, be sure to click Security and allow screen sharing. If you didn't enable recording when you created the event, you can choose to start recording now by clicking Record. For accessibility, you can also enable auto-transcription of the meeting by clicking Live Transcript, Enable Auto-Transcription. Alternatively, if someone will be manually transcribing the meeting, you can select that individual or choose to transcribe yourself. Note that auto-transcription does not apply to breakout rooms. You're now set to start your event. If you enabled the waiting room feature, click the Participants button. You can either selectively click Admit for each participant who is waiting, or click the Admit All button. Either way, keep an eye on this list during the event to ensure you don't accidentally lock out attendees who might be joining late or rejoining the event. It's a good idea to keep the participants list open throughout the webinar. At minimum, you should verify that your alternative hosts have joined, and if needed, email or phone them if they're not in the session. If you find someone who will be moderating the event, but you forgot to add them as an alternative host, you can promote them on the fly by clicking More beside their name and clicking Make Co-host. The co-host will now be able to present even with the security restrictions you put in place and will be able to manage other participants as well. Be careful not to select Make Host. Otherwise, you'll give up your administrative privileges over the meeting and become a regular attendee. If an attendee should be speaking but is currently muted, you can prompt them to unmute by clicking Ask to Unmute beside their name. Doing so will pop up a little dialog box on the attendee's side, asking them to unmute themselves. Furthermore, it will also allow them to unmute one time, even if you've disabled this ability for everyone else. At any time, if a participant is somehow being disruptive or inappropriate, you can choose to kick them out of the event by selecting More beside their name and selecting Remove. You'll be warned that the user will not be able to rejoin if you continue, and upon clicking Remove, the participant will be kicked and banned. This is why we recommended earlier to require authentication, as it ensures that someone cannot rejoin the event with the same Zoom account. Of course, someone could try rejoining with multiple Zoom accounts, and if this happens, you can choose to lock the event by clicking Security, Lock Meeting. This will prevent anyone from joining the event, so you should only use this in extreme cases where someone is being very disruptive, joining from multiple accounts, and you're confident that most or all of your legitimate attendees have already joined. Finally, be aware of the Security Suspend Participant Activities option. This is your panic button if one or more participants start being inappropriate or extremely disruptive, and you need to quickly lock things down. Clicking this will turn off everyone's video and audio, disable all screen sharing, and lock the meeting to prevent anyone from joining. To confirm the choice, click Suspend. Once you feel the situation is under control, you can unlock the meeting or selectively enable permissions by again clicking Security and selecting the appropriate options. To respond to audience questions, you can either instruct participants to raise their hands or ask questions in the chat. For raised hands, you'll want to keep an eye on the participants list. Notice that when an attendee raises their hand, you'll see an indicator beside their name. In this case, you can allow them to temporarily talk to ask their question by clicking Ask to Unmute. Then, once they've asked their question, click Mute and select Lower Hand. Alternatively, you may wish to instruct participants not to raise their hands at all and instead to ask their questions in the chat. In this case, you'll see an indicator on the chat button when someone posts a message to the chat. Clicking this button, you can choose either to answer the question live, in which case you'd respond out loud. Alternatively, you can type an answer to avoid interrupting the flow of the event. This is a great option, particularly if you have multiple moderators. While one individual is speaking, others can be scanning the chat and responding to questions. When responding, you can choose either to respond to everyone so that everyone can benefit from the response, or respond privately to the individual who posed the question. To add some interactivity with your audience and gauge their understanding or engagement with the material being covered, you may opt to launch one or more polls during the event. Ideally, you would set these up in advance by logging in to zoom.uwo.ca, selecting Meetings, selecting your meeting, and clicking Add at the bottom in the Polls section. It's best to set these up in advance so that you're not fumbling around scrambling to add questions in the middle of the event. However, if you forgot to set these up in advance, or you think of a quick question you want to ask the audience during the event, you can still add poll questions on the fly. To do so, click Polls and select Add a Question. You'll be taken to the Zoom website where you can enter a title for the poll, such as Test Your Knowledge 1. To allow participants to answer anonymously, check the Anonymous checkbox. Then you can add one or more questions to the poll. We'll add a simple question with a few options for the answer. If we wanted, we could add multiple questions to the poll by clicking Add a Question as many times as needed. When finished, click Save. You can also add multiple polls in the event you wish to run several polls throughout the event. To do so, click Add Poll to add another poll, and we'll again specify a title such as Test Your Knowledge 2, and another simple question. Finally, click Save. Now, when you're ready to launch your first poll, ensure the correct poll is selected from the drop-down at the top of the window and click Launch Polling. Your participants will now be prompted to answer the questions for the first poll, and you'll see their responses in real time. Be sure to leave them adequate time to respond, perhaps 30 to 60 seconds or more, depending on the number of questions in the poll. When you're ready to wrap up the poll, click End Polling, and if you like, you can share the results with the audience. In this case, they'll see the poll results pop up on their screens. If you need to redo the poll for some reason, you can click Relaunch Polling. Otherwise, click Stop Share Results and close the polling window. Later, when you want to launch your second poll, click Polls again, select your second poll from the drop-down list, and click Launch Polling. Your audience will again be prompted and you'll see the results in real time. Again, once finished, click End Polling, and optionally choose to share the results with the audience. To open up breakout rooms for concurrent talks or to allow participants to work in groups, click the Breakout Rooms button. Any rooms that you created in advance will be displayed, along with any pre-assigned attendees. If you didn't create rooms in advance, you'll instead see this dialog, which asks you for the number of breakout rooms to create. You can then choose to randomly assign attendees to breakout rooms, assign them manually, or allow them to choose their own rooms to join. At any time, if you make changes to the breakout rooms or the assignments, but decide you want to undo your changes and restore your pre-assigned rooms, you can do this by clicking Recreate, Recover to pre-assigned rooms. Click Yes, and you'll see all the rooms you created initially, along with any pre-assignments made. Any attendees present that were not pre-assigned can be manually assigned to rooms by clicking Assign beside the room and checking the desired attendees. Before opening up your breakout rooms, click Options. To allow participants to move between rooms, you should enable the Allow Participants to Choose Room option. It's also a good idea to allow participants to return to the main room in case they have questions or need help. If you've assigned participants to rooms, you can leave this checked to automatically move them to their assigned room upon opening up the rooms. Unless you're running a timed group work session, it's probably best to leave the automatic closing option disabled. Otherwise, if presentations run overtime, they may be cut off prematurely. Finally, you can choose a countdown after closing the breakout rooms. This will give participants a set amount of time before the rooms close and they are all automatically returned to the main room. When ready to start your rooms, click Open All Rooms. All attendees assigned to a room will be automatically moved to their assigned breakout rooms. They'll also be able to unmute themselves and start their video even if you've disabled these features in the main room. However, we've seen cases where one or two participants still can't start their video or unmute in the breakout rooms. So to be safe, you might just want to click Security and enable these options while the breakout rooms are underway. If participants will need to be able to share their screens, perhaps to show a slide deck, make sure to enable screen sharing by selecting Security and checking Share Screen. The participants list will now show only those who are left in the main room, and any attendees not in a breakout room will appear under the Unassigned heading in the Breakout Rooms dialog. To manually assign them, you can click Assign To beside their name and choose the room to which they should be moved. They will then be automatically moved to that room. Similarly, if you need to assign someone to a different room, simply select Move To beside their name and select the desired room. If you've enabled the option for participants to select their own rooms to join, they will see a Join Breakout Room button. Here on the iPad, I'll tap that, select the room I want to join, and tap Join. If a participant needs help during a breakout room session, they can click the Ask for Help button. You'll then receive a notification indicating that the individual needs help and giving you the option to join the breakout room. You can then either join the room and assist them or assign a helper to do so. If you click Later, the user will receive a message indicating that you're busy and instructing them to try again later. Note that only you as host will receive requests for help, your co-hosts will not. So if you see a request for help pop up and you want to remain in the main room, you'll need to tell one of your co-hosts which room to join as they won't know anything about the request for assistance. Alternatively, if you've enabled the option for participants to return to the main room at any time, you can tell your audience that if they need help, they should return to the main room. To do this, a participant would click Leave and then click Leave Breakout Room, returning them to the main room where they can seek help. Hosts and co-hosts can visit breakout rooms as needed, and you don't need to be worried that your meeting will somehow end if you as host join a room. The main room and all breakout rooms will remain open, but it's a good idea to ensure someone is in the main room at all times, in case participants return with questions. To join a room, simply click Join, and then Yes to confirm. You'll now be taken to the selected breakout room. To move to another room, simply click the Breakout Rooms button again and select another room to join. Finally, to return to the main room, click Leave Room, but be careful to select Leave Breakout Room and not Leave Meeting, or worse, End Meeting for all. Leaving the breakout room will take you back to the main room. Sometimes it may be useful to broadcast a message to all rooms. For example, here I'll broadcast a message that I'm about to close the rooms. I'll click Broadcast, and all participants in all rooms will see my message on their screens. When I'm ready to move everyone back to the main room, I'll click Close All Rooms. Participants will be given the grace period that I selected in the breakout room options, in this case 10 seconds, and will then automatically rejoin the main session. I'll then choose Security again and disable video, audio, and screen sharing once again to avoid disruption. If I want to start the breakout rooms back up at any time, I can click Breakout Rooms again. I can either leave my rooms and assignments as is and click Open All Rooms again. Alternatively, maybe I'm running a group work session and I want to mix it up and have attendees work with other students. In this case, I'll click Recreate All Rooms. Choose the number of rooms I want, choose to assign attendees automatically to the new rooms, and click Recreate. Now I have 5 new rooms with attendees randomly distributed across them. Finally, I would click Open All Rooms again. When you're ready to end your event, select End Meeting for All. All members of the event will be disconnected at this time. If you chose to record the event, conversion to a video file and an audio file will begin at this time. If you interrupt this process, you can always choose to go back and restart the conversion by selecting Meetings, Recorded, and clicking the Convert button. Similarly, if you're not sure where the converted video file resides, you can click the Open button and you'll see your converted video file, in this case the MP4 file here, along with an audio-only version of the meeting in the M4A file here. You'll also see a transcript of any chat messages posted if you chose to enable that feature earlier in your Zoom settings. You can ignore the M3U file. It's just a playlist referencing the MP4 file and does not need to accompany the MP4 file if you're planning to post it or otherwise make it available somewhere. If you chose to transcribe the meeting, you should also see a closed caption.txt file generated. This will contain the transcript generated by Zoom. Unfortunately, it doesn't appear to be in a format that can be directly used by video players to show closed captions. However, if you were uploading the video to a site like YouTube, you could use this file to assist you in creating the closed captions and avoid having to transcribe all of the content of the event manually. To export poll results, you can log in at zoom.uwo.ca, select Reports, Meeting, choose Poll Report, and click Search. Next, find your event and click Generate. Finally, click Download. Opening this file in Excel, you'll see each user along with his or her response to each question. Of course, if you chose to make the poll anonymous, usernames and email addresses will not be displayed. If you or any audience members encounter problems during an event, please contact the WTS Help Desk. Contact information can be found on their website, and they have telephone support available even in the evenings and on weekends. One question that arises frequently is whether STS can have someone sit in on a meeting to provide support. STS is not currently staffed to provide personnel to sit in on meetings, but if this is something you feel you absolutely require for your event, please open a ticket at helpdesk.sci.uwo.ca well in advance of your event, and we may be able to hire a student to assist with basic troubleshooting. In this case, a nominal hourly fee would be passed on to your unit. We hope that this introduction to managing events using Zoom has been helpful to you. We've seen how to add the Zoom Large Meetings add-on for larger meetings, schedule an event, manage attendee registration, create breakout rooms in advance, start an event, ensure it's configured correctly, manage participants, handle polls, manage breakout rooms, and export video, transcripts, and poll data at the end of an event. Before we go, we'll summarize a few do's and don'ts that we've covered. First of all, do open a ticket with WTS and request that Zoom Large Meetings be added to your account well in advance of your event if you'll need more than 300 attendees. Don't forget to include the user tier you'll need, such as 500 users, along with a speed code and account number to bill. Do add anyone who will be moderating your event as alternative hosts in advance when setting up your event so that you don't have to worry about promoting them to co-hosts during the event. Do set up any poll questions in advance to avoid scrambling to create questions during the event. Do ensure you schedule a dress rehearsal event in advance and stress to any moderators that they attend so that they're familiar with the service. Do ensure you run through the pre-event checks we covered in this video to ensure that your security settings are set properly, both to keep the event secure and to ensure that speakers are able to be seen and heard and to share their screens. Finally, don't forget to open a ticket with WTS a few days before the end of the month to cancel your Zoom Large Meetings add-on if you chose to sign up for it to ensure you are not billed for another month after your event has concluded. With this knowledge, you should be all set to run a smooth, successful event, and we hope you enjoy using Zoom for your next event.